Welcome back to part 3 of Java Basics. Last time we ended up doing a lot of different things with the print and println. This time what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to create variables and what are variables, how can we interact with them, and how can we get input from the user, because right now whenever we run this program it does exactly the same thing over and over and over and over again. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first delete this. Okay, so I'm deleting what we did last time, and I'm going to show you guys a few of the variables and how to print them out. So the very first variable I'm going to show you is an integer, and we're going to be creating an integer by typing the letters int, so int. So what an integer is the same thing that you guys most likely learned in high school. It's a positive or negative whole number. So there are limits on this. It's 2 to the 32nd power minus 1. But we really can kind of gauge in between there. So most of our numbers are going to be fairly small, 1,000, 2,000, million. Those are still relatively small numbers. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an integer, and we're going to say this is an integer, and then we have to name our integer. So what we're going to do is we're going to name our first one video, okay, and we're going to put the semicolon after it. So now we have a integer called video, and what we can do is to set the value of video. Right now it has no value, so we're going to do video equals, and this is the third video, so I'm going to put 3. So the way you write this is you always have to have on this side here what you are going to assign this value. Okay, so this has nothing on the equation, so you cannot write it like this, 3 equals video. It's not like it's math where you can kind of transverse it. You have all your math on the right hand side and you store it to the left hand side. That is very, very important to know and very important to remember, because that's how we're going to be storing all of our variables. So we have video there, and if we want to print this out, we do system.out.println. We go video value is, and we're going to put a colon there, and we're going to put a space. All right, right here. Then after that space, we want to print out whatever the value of video is. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to be using a joiner character, which is actually plus. And then once we get that plus, we're going to type in the variable name, which is video. Okay, this video here is text. This right here is a variable, and it's actually an integer. So we're going to run this, and I'm going to hit run, and bam. Okay, see, it pops up here. The value is 3. So if I change this value here, so let's say I change it to 6, and I run it again, it changes it right here. So this is completely dynamic of how this is going to be, how it's going to be changed. Now, let's say we want to ask the user to type in the value, and then we print out that particular value. Well, the way we take input in is very, very similar, and we need actually a scanner class. So what we're going to do is type in capital S scanner, and I'm going to call my scanner scan equals. So that right there is saying that we have a variable type of a scanner, and we might need to import it. So I'll actually create this import right here at the top, called scan. Okay, the scan is equal to a new scanner system.in. Okay, so basically this is saying, hey, we're going to use a scanner, but we're going to take in the input from the console. So once we've created our scanner, we only have to do this once, because now we've created the scanner, so all we have to do is read from the scanner every single time we want to get some input. So the first thing we're going to do is going to ask the user, what do we want to print out? Please enter a number. Okay, semicolon. And then in order to read the value, we're going to do video equals new, I'm sorry, I lie, we're going to do scan.nextInt. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to pause the program, and we're going to wait till it has a until we type in an integer. Once we type the integer in, it's going to store it into video, and then we're going to print out the video. The video value is whatever we typed in. Now you're probably saying, hey, we already have a value for video. It's right here at 6. Well, we're going to overwrite it. So what happens here is it's equal to nothing at this point, then it's equal to 6, and then once we get here, we're going to overwrite it. So whenever we save something as a variable, the old value just disappears and we no longer can retrieve it. That's very important to know later on, especially when we're trying to swap numbers around, because we will need to know that. So we're going to run this again. This should pop up here. Please enter a number. We're going to do 42, and now it says the value is 42. Perfect. Now, so far we've learned two types of variables. We've learned an integer, which is actually classified as a primitive data type. You can kind of tell the difference when you're typing them because look, see how it turned purple and it's lowercase, whereas scanner is capital, and it's what we call an object. So this is a little bit of object-oriented programming. We'll get to it in a little bit later, but this is a primitive data type, which is your basic data types there. Other basic data types that you will need to know are double, and we're going to call this one grades. Okay, so we have a double called grades, and what ends up happening with this is a double is a number value, but it can take in decimals. Alright, so like we said, integer has to be a whole number, a positive or negative whole number. A double is pretty much a real number within the conditions. It can't do all the real numbers, but it can do a lot more, and it can do decimals. So that's a very, very important to know. So if we wanted to take in this, we can go system.out.println. What is your GPA? And we're going to do grades equals scan.nextDouble. So you can kind of see that the scanner will take in whatever type we want, but we just need to make sure that it has, we just say next double, next int, and we'll talk about the other primitive data types pretty soon as well. System.out.println, your GPA is colon, and then we're going to type in grades. Semicolon. We're going to run this particular video, pick a number. Okay, this has to be an integer value, remember that. So we're going to do 3. What's my GPA? Let's say a 3.8, and there we go. So we have 3 and 3.8. Now, it is possible that you get a bunch of trailing zeros. It's kind of an overflow thing. Right now, we're not going to worry about it, but it's something that you should be aware of. What happens if we just use an integer while we're there? So let's say I said I had 4. Well, I have a 4.0. It automatically gives you at least one variable. So, and then what we're going to do here is the next thing, I'm sorry about that, my phone's ringing, is we are going to create another variable called char, and char stands for character. So we're going to say this grade letter, and we're going to do system.out.println. What letter grade do you want? Okay, and chars are a little different. Grade letter. Okay, and we're going to do scan dot, and we don't have a next char. You can actually look down some of these. You don't actually see it. So the reason, what we're going to do here is we're just going to take in a line. So we're going to do scan dot next line. Okay, so it's going to take an entire line. We're going to do char at 0. So we're going to take the very first character of whatever we type in. And then we're going to do system.out.println. The first letter you typed is grade letter. Save. We're going to run. Okay, pick a number. 4, GPA 4.20. Okay. Now, it gave me an error. Out of bounds index range 0, meaning we didn't type something in. Now, what ends up happening sometimes when you're trying to take a single letter in is that the cursor is up. Actually, let me pull up the console again. The cursor's right here, and it read it in. Well, behind here, when we hit enter, we actually created a new line, kind of like the \n. So what it does is it reads that in, and it's like, oh, okay, like this is a 0 length string. So when we want to do this, we do scan.next line here, save, and when we run this now, it will for 4.0. What it does is it skips down to the next line and it waits for whatever we're going to type in next. So we can type in happy, and the letter will be H because it was the very first one. Now you're like, hey, what if I wanted to take in the entire word happy? We can do that, okay? But it's not through a primitive. It's going to actually be a string, and it's going to be a capital S. So it's going to be, and what we're going to call this is superword. Okay. Now, instead of doing grade letter, we're going to call this one superword. And we're probably going to be using strings more than we use chars. I wanted to show you chars anyway, because if you happen to be taking the AP exam, the AP Computer Science exam, chars are very, very important. So anyway, we have superword here. We're going to run this, and then we're going to type in our stuff, and then we're going to type in super awesome word list. Okay, and look at what we typed in, super awesome word list. So it took in everything we wrote on that particular line and then into the program. So these are some of the basic ones. There's actually one other basic one that we're going to learn, and it's called Boolean, and it means true or false. So you learn, okay, and you can actually set it to be true, or you can set it to equal false, and you can do pretty much everything else that you did with it as well. Just so you know, this is how we're going to do a lot of our logic operators. So we'll talk a lot more in detail about did you learn coming up. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you